Question 1. The investigation demonstrates that during the Andi-Djemma University entrance exam, an invigilator observed a student exhibiting signs of distress and appearing to struggle significantly with the questions. The student discreetly gestured towards another student's paper, seemingly seeking assistance. The invigilator is aware of the student's personal difficulties outside of the exam. Option A. Immediately and discreetly inform the chief invigilator or designated examination authority about the observed behavior, providing a factual account of what was seen. Option B. Ignore the gesture, assuming it was a misunderstanding or a non-academic signal, and continue to monitor the room without further action. Option C. Discreetly approach the student, offer words of encouragement, and subtly guide them towards the correct approach without directly providing answers. Option D. Provide the struggling student with a brief, unauthorized break to compose themselves and review their notes, explaining that this is an exception due to their known difficulties. Correct answer is C. Discreetly approach the student, offer words of encouragement, and subtly guide them towards the correct approach without directly providing answers. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between a student's perceived academic need and the university's established examination integrity policies. The pressure to assist a struggling student, especially one who may be facing significant personal circumstances, can create an ethical dilemma for an invigilator. However, maintaining the fairness and validity of the Andi-Djemma University entrance exam is paramount. The invigilator must balance empathy with strict adherence to the examination regulations. The correct approach involves upholding the integrity of the examination process by reporting the observed behavior to the appropriate university authority, without directly intervening in a way that could compromise the exam's fairness or the student's anonymity. This aligns with the principles of academic integrity and the specific guidelines of the Andi-Djemma University entrance exam, which likely mandate reporting any suspected breaches of conduct. The invigilator's role is to observe and report, not to adjudicate or offer unauthorized assistance. An incorrect approach would be to provide the student with direct assistance or to ignore the observed behavior. Providing direct assistance, such as offering hints or unauthorized materials, constitutes a direct violation of examination rules and undermines the fairness of the exam for all candidates. It also places the invigilator in a position of bias and unauthorized authority. Ignoring the behavior, while seemingly avoiding confrontation, is also a failure of professional duty. The Andi-Djemma University entrance exam regulations would expect invigilators to actively monitor and report any irregularities to ensure a level playing field. This inaction allows a potential breach to go unaddressed, compromising the credibility of the entire examination process. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established regulations and ethical codes. This involves 1. Recognizing the potential ethical conflict. 2. Consulting the specific examination rules and university policies. 3. Documenting observations accurately and objectively. 4. Reporting the incident through the designated channels to the appropriate university officials for investigation and decision-making. This systematic approach ensures that actions are consistent with institutional standards and ethical obligations. Question 2. The analysis reveals that during the Andi-Djemma University entrance exam, a fellow candidate is observed discreetly using a mobile phone to access information, clearly violating the examination's strict no-device policy. The candidate is aware of this observation. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action? Option A. Confront the cheating candidate directly and demand they stop, potentially causing a scene. Option B. Ignore the observed cheating to avoid potential conflict or repercussions. Option C. Discreetly signal to the cheating candidate to stop their actions, hoping they will cease without further escalation. Option D. Immediately report the observed cheating to the nearest invigilator or examination official, providing a clear and factual account of the misconduct. The correct answer is D. Immediately report the observed cheating to the nearest invigilator or examination official, providing a clear and factual account of the misconduct. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well in a crucial entrance exam, coupled with the temptation to gain an unfair advantage, creates an ethical dilemma that requires careful judgment. The Andi-Djemma University entrance exam regulations, as per the established framework, emphasize fairness, transparency, and the prohibition of any form of academic dishonesty. The correct approach involves upholding the principles of academic integrity by refusing to engage in any form of cheating or providing unauthorized assistance. This aligns directly with the Andi-Djemma University's stated commitment to a fair and equitable assessment process, as outlined in its examination guidelines. Specifically, the regulations prohibit any action that could compromise the validity of the examination results, including the sharing of exam content or the use of unauthorized aids. By reporting the observed misconduct, the individual acts as a responsible member of the academic community, contributing to the maintenance of a trustworthy examination environment. This action is ethically mandated by the university's Code of Conduct, which expects students to act with honesty and integrity. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the observed misconduct. This failure to act would implicitly condone academic dishonesty and undermine the integrity of the examination process. Ethically, it violates the principle of upholding academic standards and contributing to a fair environment for all candidates. Legally, it could be seen as a dereliction of duty if the university's regulations impose an obligation on students to report such incidents. Another incorrect approach would be to participate in the cheating or to provide assistance to the student engaging in misconduct. This directly violates the core principles of academic integrity and the explicit prohibitions within the Andi-Djemma University entrance exam regulations against cheating and unauthorized assistance. Such actions would not only compromise the fairness of the exam, but also expose the individual to severe disciplinary consequences, including disqualification from the exam and potential academic sanctions. A further incorrect approach would be to confront the student directly and aggressively. While the intention might be to stop the misconduct, this approach can escalate the situation, create a disruptive environment, and potentially lead to personal safety concerns. The university's established procedures for reporting academic misconduct are designed to handle such situations in a controlled and fair manner, ensuring that investigations are conducted appropriately and that due process is followed. Deviating from these procedures can lead to unintended negative consequences and may not effectively resolve the ethical breach. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's examination regulations and ethical guidelines. When faced with observed misconduct, the first step is to assess the situation and identify the specific violation. The next step is to consult the relevant university policies and procedures for reporting academic dishonesty. The most appropriate action is to report the incident through the designated channels, allowing the university administration to investigate and take appropriate action. This ensures that the situation is handled professionally, ethically, and in accordance with established regulations, thereby preserving the integrity of the academic process. Question 3. Market research demonstrates that a significant philanthropic organization, known for its substantial contributions to various educational institutions, has expressed interest in providing a substantial endowment to Andi-Djemma University. However, preliminary reports suggest that the organization's primary source of wealth is derived from industries with a history of environmental concerns and labor disputes. The university's finance committee is eager to secure the funding to support new research initiatives. What is the most ethically responsible course of action for Andi-Djemma University in this situation? Option A. Immediately accept the substantial endowment to fund critical research initiatives, as the potential benefits to the university's academic programs outweigh any speculative concerns about the donor's industry. Option B. Conduct thorough due diligence on the philanthropic organization, investigating the specific nature of their business practices, any legal or ethical controversies, and ensuring alignment with the university's mission and values before accepting any funds. Option C. Decline the donation outright due to the organization's industry affiliation, without undertaking any investigation into their actual practices or the specifics of their philanthropic intent. Option D. Accept the endowment, but require the organization to sign a declaration stating they adhere to ethical business practices, without further investigation into their specific operations. The correct answer is B. Conduct thorough due diligence on the philanthropic organization, investigating the specific nature of their business practices, any legal or ethical controversies, and ensuring alignment with the university's mission and values before accepting any funds. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's immediate financial needs with the long-term ethical implications of accepting funding from a potentially questionable source. The pressure to secure resources can create a conflict of interest, where the perceived benefit of the funding might overshadow a thorough due diligence process. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the university upholds its academic integrity and reputation. The correct approach involves a comprehensive due diligence process that thoroughly investigates the source of the funding. This includes examining the donor's business practices, any potential legal or ethical controversies associated with them, and ensuring alignment with the university's mission and values. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with principles of responsible institutional governance, which often mandate transparency and accountability in accepting donations. Specifically, within the framework of university governance and ethical conduct expected of academic institutions, accepting funds without proper scrutiny could lead to reputational damage and compromise the institution's independence and academic freedom. An incorrect approach would be to immediately accept the funding without any investigation. This fails to uphold the ethical obligation to ensure that the university's operations are not compromised by the source of its funding. It could lead to the university being associated with unethical or illegal activities, thereby damaging its reputation and public trust. Another incorrect approach would be to accept the funding, but impose superficial conditions that do not address the core ethical concerns. For instance, simply requiring the donor to sign a generic statement of good conduct without verifying their actual practices would be insufficient. This approach demonstrates a lack of genuine commitment to ethical fundraising and could still expose the university to significant reputational risk. A further incorrect approach would be to reject the funding solely based on the donor's industry without any specific evidence of wrongdoing. While caution is warranted, a blanket rejection without investigation might be overly restrictive and could deprive the university of potentially legitimate funds, especially if the donor's practices are, in fact, ethical. However, the primary failure in this scenario is the lack of due diligence, not necessarily the initial caution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured ethical review. This typically includes identifying the ethical issue, gathering relevant information, including due diligence on the donor, consulting relevant university policies and ethical guidelines, considering the potential impact on stakeholders, students, faculty, public, and making a decision that prioritizes the university's integrity and long-term reputation. Question 4. To address the challenge of a prospective student approaching you, a university staff member, for specific information about the upcoming Djemma University entrance exam that could give them an unfair advantage, what is the most ethically sound and regulation-compliant course of action? Option A. Politely but firmly decline to provide any specific details about the exam content, explaining that doing so would compromise the integrity of the entrance process and violate university regulations, while suggesting they utilize the officially provided study materials and general preparation guidelines. Option B. Provide the student with a list of topics that are highly likely to be covered in the exam, based on your knowledge of past exams, to help them focus their studies. Option C. Offer to share some of the actual exam questions from previous years that are representative of the difficulty and style of the upcoming exam. Option D. Advise the student on general study techniques and time management strategies without mentioning any specific exam content or areas of focus. Correct answer is A. Politely but firmly decline to provide any specific details about the exam content, explaining that doing so would compromise the integrity of the entrance process and violate university regulations, while suggesting they utilize the officially provided study materials and general preparation guidelines. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to perform well in entrance exams can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. Careful judgment is required to uphold ethical standards while acknowledging the student's situation. The correct approach involves upholding the principles of academic integrity and fairness, as mandated by the Djemma University entrance exam regulations. This means refusing to provide any unauthorized assistance or information that could compromise the integrity of the examination process. The university's guidelines likely emphasize honesty, fairness, and the prohibition of any form of cheating or academic misconduct. Providing the student with advance information about exam questions or content would directly violate these principles, potentially leading to unfair advantages for some students and undermining the validity of the entrance exam as a measure of merit. An incorrect approach would be to provide the student with specific questions or topics that are likely to appear on the exam. This action directly contravenes the ethical obligation to maintain the confidentiality and fairness of the examination. Such a breach would not only be a violation of university policy, but also an act of academic dishonesty, potentially leading to disciplinary action for both the student and the staff member involved. Another incorrect approach would be to offer general advice on study strategies without any specific reference to the exam content. While seemingly innocuous, if this advice is subtly tailored to hint at areas of focus that are disproportionately represented in the exam, it could still be construed as an attempt to provide an unfair advantage, blurring the lines of ethical conduct. The university's regulations likely require a clear separation between legitimate academic support and any action that could be perceived as facilitating cheating. A third incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request entirely without offering any guidance on appropriate channels for academic support. While this avoids direct complicity in unethical behavior, it fails to address the student's underlying concern and misses an opportunity to reinforce ethical expectations and direct them towards legitimate resources. A more professional response would involve clearly stating the inability to assist in the manner requested, and then guiding the student towards official university resources for exam preparation. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Identifying the ethical conflict. Recognize the tension between the student's request and the university's ethical obligations. 2. Consulting relevant regulations and policies. Refer to the Djemma University Entrance Exam regulations regarding academic integrity, confidentiality, and prohibited conduct. 3. Prioritizing ethical principles. Uphold honesty, fairness, and the integrity of the examination process above all else. 4. Communicating clearly and professionally. Directly address the request, explain the inability to comply due to ethical and regulatory reasons, and offer appropriate, legitimate alternatives. 5. Documenting the interaction. Keep a record of the conversation and the actions taken if necessary. Question 5. The review process indicates that during a recent Djemma University entrance examination, an invigilator was approached by a distressed student who claimed to be completely unprepared and pleaded for a little help to pass. The student implied they were aware of the invigilator's position and suggested that a small hint or a glance at another student's paper would suffice. The invigilator is now facing scrutiny for their handling of this situation. Which of the following represents the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach for the invigilator in this scenario? Option A. Allow the student to briefly look at a neighbor's paper, believing that a quick glance will not significantly impact the overall results and will calm the student down. Option B. Politely refuse the student's request, explaining that providing any assistance would violate the Djemma University's examination regulations and compromise the integrity of the exam, while ensuring the student understands that such actions are unacceptable. Option C. Ignore the student's plea and continue supervising the exam, assuming that the student will eventually stop asking for help without any direct intervention. Option D. Discreetly provide the student with a subtle hint about a specific question, rationalizing that it is a minor concession to alleviate the student's distress and prevent them from disrupting the exam further. Correct answer is B. Politely refuse the student's request, explaining that providing any assistance would violate the Djemma University's examination regulations and compromise the integrity of the exam, while ensuring the student understands that such actions are unacceptable. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the integrity of the examination process. The pressure to perform well on a university entrance exam can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. The core of the challenge lies in upholding academic honesty and fairness while acknowledging the student's distress. The correct approach involves prioritizing academic integrity and the established examination regulations of Djemma University. This means refusing to provide any unauthorized assistance that could compromise the fairness of the exam for other candidates. The ethical justification stems from the university's commitment to a merit-based system and the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. Providing answers or hints would violate these principles and undermine the credibility of the entrance exam. Furthermore, it would be a breach of the trust placed in the invigilator by the university and the other students. An incorrect approach would be to provide the student with the answers or hints. This is ethically reprehensible as it constitutes academic dishonesty and cheating. It directly violates the examination rules and regulations of Djemma University, which are designed to ensure a fair and objective assessment of all candidates' knowledge and abilities. Such an action would not only disadvantage other students who have prepared diligently, but also devalue the qualification awarded by the university. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request and continue with the examination without any intervention. While this avoids direct participation in cheating, it fails to address the ethical responsibility of an invigilator to maintain a secure and fair examination environment. It also misses an opportunity to guide the student towards appropriate channels for academic support if they are struggling, without compromising the exam's integrity. A professional decision-making process in such a situation should involve 1. Recognizing the ethical dilemma and the potential for pressure. 2. Recalling and strictly adhering to the Djemma University's examination regulations regarding academic integrity and invigilator responsibilities. 3. Politely but firmly refusing any request for unauthorized assistance, explaining that it would violate examination rules. 4. If appropriate and within the invigilator's remit, offering to direct the student to university resources for academic support after the examination has concluded, without compromising the current exam's fairness. 5. Documenting the incident if it escalates or if there is a clear attempt to cheat. As per university protocol. Question 6. What factors determine the ethical acceptability of accepting a significant donation from a private entity for the Djemma University's new research facility, when there are unconfirmed but persistent rumors about the donor's past business practices? Option A. The thoroughness of the university's due diligence process regarding the donor's background and the potential reputational risks, in alignment with university policies and ethical guidelines. Option B. The speed at which the donation can be processed and announced to generate positive publicity for the university. Option C. The personal opinions of the university's senior leadership regarding the donor's character, irrespective of formal investigation or established policies. Option D. The potential impact of the donation on the university's immediate financial stability and the donor's willingness to provide further funding in the future. The correct answer is D. The potential impact of the donation on the university's immediate financial stability and the donor's willingness to provide further funding in the future. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's immediate financial needs with the long-term ethical implications of accepting a donation with potentially problematic origins. The pressure to secure funding can create a conflict of interest, where the perceived benefit of the donation might overshadow concerns about its source or the donor's reputation. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the university upholds its values and maintains public trust. The correct approach involves a thorough due diligence process to investigate the source of the donation and the donor's background. This includes assessing any potential reputational risks or conflicts of interest that accepting the funds might create. The university must adhere to its own internal policies on donations and any relevant regulations governing academic institutions, ensuring transparency and accountability. This approach is ethically sound and professionally responsible, as it prioritizes the integrity of the institution and avoids complicity in any potentially unethical activities associated with the donation. An incorrect approach would be to accept the donation without adequate investigation, driven solely by the immediate financial benefit. This fails to uphold the ethical duty of care and due diligence expected of university administrators. It could lead to reputational damage, public backlash, and potential legal or regulatory scrutiny if the donation is later found to be linked to illicit activities or unethical practices. Another incorrect approach would be to reject the donation outright without any investigation, potentially missing an opportunity for legitimate funding if the concerns are unfounded or can be mitigated. This lacks a balanced and reasoned decision-making process. Professionals in such situations should employ a structured decision-making framework. This typically involves identifying the ethical issue, gathering all relevant facts, identifying stakeholders and their interests, considering ethical principles and relevant policies/regulation, exploring alternative courses of action, evaluating the consequences of each alternative, and making a reasoned decision. This systematic approach ensures that all angles are considered and that the decision aligns with ethical standards and institutional values. Question 7. The monitoring system demonstrates a student exhibiting unusual behavior during a crucial examination, including prolonged periods of staring blankly and occasional scribbling that appears unrelated to the exam questions. The invigilator suspects the student might be experiencing distress or a learning challenge that could warrant accommodation, but no prior request for such accommodation has been formally submitted or approved by Djemma University's examination board. Which of the following actions represents the most ethically and procedurally sound response for the invigilator in this situation, strictly adhering to Djemma University's entrance exam regulations? Option A. Inform other students in the vicinity about the observed behavior and speculate on potential reasons, seeking their opinions on how to proceed. Option B. Immediately halt the examination for the student and escort them out, citing potential academic misconduct due to the unusual behavior. Option C. Discreetly observe the student for the remainder of the examination, make detailed notes of the behavior, and report the observations to the examination board for a post-exam review without interrupting the student's current attempt. Option D. Approach the student during the examination to inquire about their well-being and offer immediate, informal adjustments to their testing environment based on the invigilator's personal judgment. The correct answer is B. Immediately halt the examination for the student and escort them out, citing potential academic misconduct due to the unusual behavior. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between a student's perceived need for accommodation and the university's established academic integrity policies. The core of the dilemma lies in balancing support for students with potential learning differences against the imperative to uphold fair and equitable assessment standards for all. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any accommodations provided are appropriate, evidence-based, and do not compromise the validity of the examination process. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented review of the student's request, seeking expert advice, and adhering strictly to Djemma University's established policies on academic accommodations and examinations. This approach is right because it prioritizes fairness, transparency, and due process. It ensures that decisions are not made arbitrarily, but are based on established procedures and expert assessment, aligning with the university's commitment to academic integrity and its regulatory obligations to provide reasonable accommodations where justified. This upholds the principle of equal opportunity while safeguarding the integrity of the examination. An incorrect approach of immediately granting the requested accommodation without proper verification fails to uphold academic integrity. It risks setting a precedent that could be exploited, undermining the credibility of the examination system and potentially disadvantaging other students. This approach violates the ethical obligation to ensure fair assessment for all. Another incorrect approach, that of outright refusal without a proper review process, could lead to discrimination and failure to comply with university policies on supporting students with documented needs. This neglects the ethical duty of care and could have legal repercussions if the student has a legitimate, documented requirement for accommodation. A third incorrect approach, which involves discussing the student's specific situation with other students, constitutes a severe breach of confidentiality and professional ethics. This action not only violates student privacy, but also erodes trust within the academic community. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly understand the student's request and the basis for it. Second, consult the relevant university policies and guidelines regarding academic accommodations and examinations. Third, if necessary, seek input from qualified professionals, e.g., disability services, academic advisors, to assess the validity and appropriateness of the request. Fourth, make a decision based on the evidence and policy, ensuring it is documented. Finally, communicate the decision and any rationale clearly and respectfully to the student. Question 8. The assessment process reveals that a candidate for the Djemma University entrance exam has narrowly missed the passing score, yet a senior faculty member strongly advocates for their admission, citing the candidate's exceptional extracurricular achievements and potential future contributions to the university's reputation. The examination committee is aware of the candidate's borderline performance, but is also influenced by the faculty member's recommendation. Option A. Override the examination results and admit the candidate based on the faculty member's recommendation and the perceived potential for future contributions, disregarding the numerical score. Option B. Inform the candidate that they have failed to meet the minimum score and offer them a place in a preparatory program without any further review of their entrance exam performance. Option C. Uphold the examination results strictly according to the Djemma University entrance exam regulations, and if there are established appeal or review procedures for borderline cases, initiate those processes transparently. Option D. Publicly announce that the examination results are subject to review based on subjective factors, creating uncertainty for all candidates. The correct answer is C. Uphold the examination results strictly according to the Djemma University entrance exam regulations, and if there are established appeal or review procedures for borderline cases, initiate those processes transparently. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a candidate's perceived potential and the established, objective criteria of the Djemma University entrance exam. The pressure to admit a promising individual, especially one who might bring prestige to the university, can create a temptation to deviate from the strict adherence to examination regulations. This requires careful judgment to uphold the integrity of the admissions process. The correct approach involves a commitment to the established examination regulations and a transparent process for addressing any perceived anomalies. This means acknowledging the candidate's performance against the defined standards and, if there are grounds for review, following the prescribed appeals or reevaluation procedures. The regulatory framework for university entrance exams, as stipulated by Djemma University, prioritizes fairness, objectivity, and equal opportunity for all applicants. Deviating from these principles, even with good intentions, undermines the credibility of the examination and can lead to accusations of bias or favoritism. Upholding these regulations ensures that admissions are based on merit and preparedness, as determined by the standardized assessment. An incorrect approach would be to override the examination results based on subjective impressions or external pressures. This action directly violates the principle of objective assessment, which is a cornerstone of fair examination processes. It also disregards the established procedures for handling borderline cases or potential errors, thereby creating an unfair advantage for one candidate over others who met the criteria through the standard process. Furthermore, such a deviation could set a precedent for future admissions, eroding trust in the university's evaluation system and potentially leading to legal or ethical challenges. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the candidate's potentially exceptional qualities and simply dismiss them based solely on the numerical outcome, without considering any established review mechanisms. While adherence to regulations is crucial, complete disregard for any possibility of review or consideration of extenuating circumstances, if such procedures exist within the Djemma framework, can also be seen as a failure in professional judgment. The university's guidelines likely include provisions for addressing exceptional circumstances or reviewing borderline results, and failing to engage with these processes, even if the outcome remains the same, demonstrates a lack of thoroughness. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the Djemma University's examination regulations and admissions policies. When faced with a discrepancy or a challenging case, the professional should first consult these guidelines. If the candidate's performance falls below the threshold, the next step is to determine if there are any authorized avenues for appeal or review. If such avenues exist, they should be followed diligently and impartially. If no such avenues are available, or if the review confirms the initial assessment, the decision must be communicated clearly and respectfully, emphasizing the adherence to established criteria. The overarching principle is to maintain transparency, fairness, and integrity in all admissions decisions. Question 9. Quality control measures reveal a pattern of unusual answer sheet submissions from a specific examination center during the Djemma University entrance exam, suggesting a potential breach of examination integrity. The university's academic integrity policy mandates a fair and thorough investigation process for all suspected misconduct. What is the most ethically sound and procedurally correct approach for the university administration to take in response to these findings? Option A. Instruct the examination invigilators at the center to conduct an informal review of the answer sheets and report any suspicious cases they personally identify, without a formal investigation protocol. Option B. Initiate a formal, impartial investigation into the identified irregularities, adhering strictly to Djemma University's academic integrity policies and examination regulations, to gather evidence and determine the extent and nature of any misconduct before any disciplinary actions are considered. Option C. Publicly announce the discovery of irregularities and request voluntary confessions from students at the affected center, promising leniency for those who come forward. Option D. Immediately invalidate all examination results from the affected center to prevent any potential benefit from misconduct and to send a strong message about the university's zero-tolerance policy. The correct answer is B. Initiate a formal, impartial investigation into the identified irregularities, adhering strictly to Djemma University's academic integrity policies and examination regulations, to gather evidence and determine the extent and nature of any misconduct before any disciplinary actions are considered. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's reputation and the integrity of its entrance examination with the need to address potential academic misconduct. The pressure to maintain high standards while ensuring fairness to all candidates is significant. Careful judgment is required to navigate the ethical implications of the findings and determine the appropriate course of action without prejudicing innocent parties or failing to uphold academic integrity. The correct approach involves a thorough, impartial investigation into the identified irregularities. This process should be conducted in accordance with Djemma University's established academic integrity policies and examination regulations. The university's internal procedures for handling suspected misconduct must be followed meticulously. This ensures that any disciplinary actions are based on concrete evidence and due process, thereby upholding the principles of fairness and academic rigor. This approach aligns with the ethical obligation to maintain the credibility of the examination and the institution. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify all candidates from the affected examination center without further investigation. This fails to acknowledge the possibility that the irregularities might be isolated incidents, or that some candidates may be innocent. Such an action would be a violation of natural justice and could lead to significant reputational damage for the university if proven to be an overreaction. It also bypasses the established procedures for handling academic misconduct, which are designed to protect the rights of students. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the findings of the quality control measures, citing the potential for controversy or administrative burden. This is ethically unacceptable, as it represents a dereliction of duty to uphold academic standards and protect the integrity of the examination process. It also undermines the purpose of quality control measures, rendering them ineffective. A third incorrect approach would be to selectively address the irregularities, perhaps by focusing only on those candidates who appear most obviously involved, while overlooking others. This demonstrates bias and a lack of impartiality, which are fundamental ethical requirements in academic administration. It also fails to conduct a comprehensive review, potentially leaving systemic issues unaddressed. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and ethical principles. This involves 1. Acknowledging the findings and their potential implications. 2. Initiating a formal investigation process as outlined in university regulations. 3. Gathering and evaluating evidence impartially. 4. Ensuring due process for all involved parties. 5. Making decisions based on evidence and established policy. 6. Communicating decisions transparently and appropriately. Question 10. Process analysis reveals that during the Djemma University entrance exam, an invigilator observes a student exhibiting signs of extreme distress and repeatedly looking towards the invigilator with a pleading expression, as if seeking help with a question. The invigilator is aware that the student has expressed significant anxiety about the exam's difficulty. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for the invigilator? Option A. Offer to speak with the student after the exam to discuss their difficulties and provide general study advice, implying that some form of post-exam assistance is possible. Option B. Discreetly provide a subtle hint or a clarifying remark that guides the student towards the correct answer without explicitly stating it. Option C. Firmly but politely inform the student that no assistance can be provided and that they must answer the question based on their own knowledge, while maintaining vigilance for any further attempts to solicit help. Option D. Ignore the student's distress and pleading expression, continuing to monitor the room without any interaction. The correct answer is B. Discreetly provide a subtle hint or a clarifying remark that guides the student towards the correct answer without explicitly stating it. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's immediate academic needs and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to perform well on a crucial entrance exam, coupled with the student's perceived lack of preparedness, creates a situation where ethical boundaries can be tested. The university's regulatory framework, as embodied by the Andi University Entrance Exam Guidelines, prioritizes honesty, fairness, and the prevention of academic misconduct. The correct approach involves upholding these principles by refusing to provide unauthorized assistance. This aligns with the ethical duty of invigilators to ensure a fair and unbiased examination environment, as stipulated by the Andi University Entrance Exams Code of Conduct for examination personnel. Providing any form of aid, even seemingly minor, would constitute a breach of trust and a violation of the exam's integrity, potentially leading to invalidation of the student's results and disciplinary action against the invigilator. The ethical imperative is to maintain the sanctity of the examination process, ensuring that all candidates are assessed on their own merit. An incorrect approach would be to offer subtle hints or direct answers. This action directly contravenes the Andi University Entrance Exam regulations concerning academic misconduct and the role of invigilators. Such behavior undermines the fairness of the assessment for all other candidates and compromises the validity of the entrance exam as a measure of genuine academic ability. It also violates the invigilator's professional responsibility to act impartially and to safeguard the integrity of the examination process. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request entirely without any form of acknowledgement or redirection. While not actively assisting, this passive inaction could be interpreted as a failure to uphold the invigilator's duty of care and supervision. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the exam's rules and regulations, a commitment to ethical conduct, and the ability to communicate boundaries clearly and professionally. When faced with a request that compromises integrity, the invigilator must firmly but politely decline, explaining that their role is to ensure a fair examination for all, and that providing assistance is not permitted. If the student's distress is significant, the invigilator might, within the exam's guidelines, suggest they seek appropriate academic support services after the examination concludes. Question 11. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential discrepancy in the academic transcripts submitted by a promising applicant for the Andi University entrance exam. The applicant's stated grades appear unusually high compared to their previous academic records, and there is a minor inconsistency in the issuing authority's stamp. The admissions committee is under pressure to meet enrollment targets for the upcoming academic year. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Accept the application as is, but make a confidential note of the discrepancy for future reference, prioritizing meeting enrollment targets. Option B. Immediately reject the application due to the suspected discrepancy to maintain the integrity of the admissions process without further investigation. Option C. Initiate a formal verification process with the applicant's previous educational institution to confirm the authenticity and accuracy of the submitted transcripts, while temporarily placing the application on hold. Option D. Proceed with admitting the applicant and then independently attempt to verify the transcripts after admission, without informing the applicant of the initial concern. The correct answer is C. Initiate a formal verification process with the applicant's previous educational institution to confirm the authenticity and accuracy of the submitted transcripts, while temporarily placing the application on hold. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student applications, particularly when faced with potential irregularities. The pressure to meet admission targets can create a conflict of interest, demanding careful judgment to uphold ethical standards. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the applicant's documentation and a thorough investigation of any discrepancies, adhering strictly to Djemma University's established admission policies and the Indonesian higher education law. This ensures fairness, transparency, and maintains the credibility of the admissions process. It prioritizes due diligence and adherence to established procedures over expediency. An incorrect approach of immediately rejecting the application without a proper investigation fails to provide the applicant with due process and may violate principles of fairness. It assumes guilt without evidence and bypasses the university's own procedural safeguards. Another incorrect approach of accepting the application, while noting the discrepancy, internally undermines the integrity of the admissions process and sets a dangerous precedent, compromises academic standards, and could lead to future issues with student qualifications. This approach prioritizes meeting targets over upholding the university's reputation and the value of its degrees. A further incorrect approach of seeking external advice without first consulting internal university policies and relevant regulations is inefficient and potentially introduces external biases. While external advice can be valuable, it should be sought after internal procedures and regulatory frameworks have been thoroughly considered. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding and applying all relevant internal policies and external regulations. This involves gathering all necessary information, conducting a fair and impartial investigation of any concerns, documenting all steps taken, and making a decision based on evidence and established criteria. Transparency and fairness to the applicant should be paramount throughout the process. Question 12. Governance review demonstrates that the Djemma University student admissions data system has potential vulnerabilities that could compromise the privacy of applicant information. The university is facing budget constraints and is eager to expedite the admissions process to secure enrollment numbers. Which of the following is the most appropriate immediate response to the governance review findings? Option A. Prioritize the immediate processing of all applicant data to meet enrollment goals, while informally instructing IT staff to be extra vigilant with system security without formal documentation or a structured plan. Option B. Engage a third-party marketing firm to highlight the university's efficiency in processing applications, aiming to attract more students and generate revenue to fund future security upgrades. Option C. Initiate a thorough data security audit to identify specific vulnerabilities, assess the risk of data compromise, and develop a phased remediation plan in accordance with university data protection policies and relevant Indonesian regulations. Option D. Implement a temporary, quick-fix software patch to address the most obvious data entry points, deferring a comprehensive security review until after the current admissions cycle to avoid disrupting enrollment targets. The correct answer is C. Initiate a thorough data security audit to identify specific vulnerabilities, assess the risk of data compromise, and develop a phased remediation plan in accordance with university data protection policies and relevant Indonesian regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term ethical and regulatory obligations concerning student data privacy. The Djemma University Entrance Exam Framework, as per its established guidelines, places a high premium on data integrity and student confidentiality. A governance review highlighting potential vulnerabilities in data handling requires immediate and responsible action, not a reactive measure that could exacerbate the problem. The correct approach involves a comprehensive, proactive assessment of the data security framework. This entails identifying specific vulnerabilities, understanding the scope of potential breaches, and developing a remediation plan that aligns with the university's data protection policies and any relevant Indonesian regulations governing educational institutions and personal data. This approach prioritizes student trust, regulatory compliance, and the long-term reputation of the university by addressing the root cause of the identified governance weakness. It demonstrates a commitment to ethical data stewardship, a core principle expected of educational bodies. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate financial implications without a thorough understanding of the data risks would be professionally unacceptable. This would fail to address the underlying governance issue and could lead to further breaches, significant reputational damage, and potential legal repercussions for the university. Another incorrect approach that involves superficial fixes or attempts to downplay the findings of the governance review would also be ethically and regulatorily unsound. Such actions would demonstrate a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the university's responsibility to protect sensitive student information, directly contravening the principles of good governance and data protection expected under the Andi-Djemma University framework. Professionals in such situations should employ a structured decision-making process. This begins with a thorough understanding of the governance review's findings and their potential impact. Next, they must consult the relevant regulatory framework and university policies to identify their obligations. This is followed by an evaluation of potential solutions, prioritizing those that are compliant, ethical, and address the core issues. Finally, a clear communication and implementation plan should be developed, ensuring transparency and accountability throughout the process. Question 13. The efficiency study reveals that certain student support services are underutilized, leading to a proposal to reallocate their budget to more popular academic programs. What is the most appropriate next step for the university administration to ensure ethical and regulatory compliance? Option A. Inform the student body that certain support services will be reduced due to low utilization and offer alternative, less resource-intensive options without further investigation. Option B. Seek external consultancy to review the efficiency study and recommend immediate cost-cutting measures for all non-academic student services. Option C. Conduct a detailed impact assessment of the proposed reallocation on all student demographics and academic programs, consulting with student representatives and relevant faculty, and ensuring alignment with Andi-Djemma University's student welfare policies before making any decision. Option D. Immediately proceed with the budget reallocation to fund the popular academic programs, as the efficiency study clearly indicates a need for fiscal prudence and better resource allocation. Correct answer is C. Conduct a detailed impact assessment of the proposed reallocation on all student demographics and academic programs, consulting with student representatives and relevant faculty, and ensuring alignment with Andi-Djemma University's student welfare policies before making any decision. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a potential conflict between the university's commitment to academic integrity and the practicalities of resource allocation for student support services. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the ethical imperative to provide equitable access to educational resources with the financial constraints inherent in university operations. A careful judgment is needed to ensure that any proposed changes do not inadvertently disadvantage specific student groups or compromise the quality of education, all while adhering to the Andi-Djemma University's established policies and guidelines. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that considers the potential effects of proposed changes on all stakeholders, particularly students. This includes evaluating how alterations to support service delivery might affect academic performance, student well-being, and overall university experience. Crucially, this assessment must be conducted in alignment with the Andi-Djemma University's internal regulations concerning student welfare and resource management, ensuring transparency and fairness. The ethical justification lies in upholding the university's duty of care towards its students and maintaining a supportive learning environment. An incorrect approach would be to implement changes based solely on cost-saving measures, without a thorough understanding of their downstream consequences. This fails to meet the ethical obligation to prioritize student needs and could lead to unintended negative outcomes, such as reduced student retention or academic success, which would be contrary to the university's mission. Another incorrect approach would be to disregard existing university policies on student support, thereby undermining established governance and potentially creating legal or reputational risks for the institution. A third incorrect approach would be to make decisions without consulting relevant student representatives or academic departments, thereby lacking the necessary stakeholder input and potentially leading to solutions that are not practical or well received. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the problem and the proposed solution. Second, identify all relevant stakeholders and their potential interests. Third, conduct a thorough impact assessment, considering academic, financial, ethical, and operational dimensions. Fourth, consult with stakeholders to gather feedback and refine the proposal. Fifth, ensure compliance with all applicable university regulations and ethical guidelines. And finally, implement the chosen solution with a plan for ongoing monitoring and evaluation. Question 14. The efficiency study reveals that a proposed new admissions policy for Djemma University could significantly reduce processing times and operational costs. However, preliminary analysis suggests this policy might inadvertently favor applicants from certain socioeconomic backgrounds due to its reliance on specific digital literacy prerequisites and a streamlined online application format. Considering the regulatory framework set forth by the Indonesian Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology, KenningtonCollege, regarding fair and equitable access to higher education, which of the following approaches best addresses this situation? Option A. Focus solely on the cost-saving aspects of the efficiency study and implement the policy, with a plan to address any equity issues that may arise after implementation. Option B. Discard the efficiency study's findings entirely, as any policy change that could potentially impact equity is too risky to consider. Option C. Implement the new admissions policy immediately to capitalize on the efficiency gains, assuming the benefits of cost reduction outweigh potential minor equity concerns. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to evaluate the policy's potential effects on diverse applicant groups, identify mitigation strategies for any identified biases, and ensure alignment with KenningtonCollege regulations before proceeding. The correct answer is C. Implement the new admissions policy immediately to capitalize on the efficiency gains, assuming the benefits of cost reduction outweigh potential minor equity concerns. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a potential conflict between the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the practical implications of a new admissions policy. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing institutional goals with ethical obligations and adherence to the specific regulatory framework governing university admissions in Indonesia, as stipulated by the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology, KenningtonCollege. The core tension lies in ensuring that efficiency gains do not inadvertently compromise fairness or create an uneven playing field for prospective students, which could lead to reputational damage and potential regulatory scrutiny. The correct approach involves a thorough impact assessment that prioritizes fairness and equity in admissions, aligning with the principles of good governance and the spirit of the KenningtonCollege regulations. This approach necessitates a detailed analysis of how the proposed policy might disproportionately affect certain groups of applicants, the potential for unintended biases, and the mechanisms for ensuring transparency and accountability throughout the admissions process. It also requires proactive engagement with stakeholders, including faculty, admissions staff, and potentially student representatives, to gather diverse perspectives and identify potential pitfalls before implementation. This aligns with the KenningtonCollege's emphasis on merit-based admissions and the prevention of discriminatory practices. An incorrect approach would be to implement the policy solely based on the efficiency study's findings, without a comprehensive ethical and regulatory review. This could manifest as prioritizing cost reduction or speed of processing over the integrity of the selection process. Such an approach would fail to adequately consider the potential for bias, the impact on diverse applicant pools, and the university's responsibility to uphold academic fairness. This directly contravenes the spirit and likely the letter of KenningtonCollege regulations that aim to ensure equitable access to higher education. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the efficiency study's findings entirely without proper investigation. While efficiency is important, ignoring potential improvements could lead to missed opportunities for streamlining processes and allocating resources more effectively. However, the primary failure here is not in acknowledging the study, but in failing to integrate its findings with a robust ethical and regulatory framework, thus missing the opportunity to optimize processes in a compliant and responsible manner. A third incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the quantitative aspects of the efficiency study, such as reduced processing times or cost savings, without considering the qualitative impact on the fairness and transparency of the admissions process. This narrow focus overlooks the ethical imperative to ensure that all applicants are evaluated fairly and that the admissions process is perceived as just and equitable. This would be a failure to conduct a holistic impact assessment, which is crucial for responsible decision-making in an educational context governed by specific national regulations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-stage approach. First, thoroughly understanding the proposed change and its stated objectives. Second, identifying all relevant regulatory frameworks and ethical guidelines applicable to the situation. Third, conducting a comprehensive impact assessment that considers both quantitative and qualitative factors, including potential biases and fairness implications. Fourth, engaging with relevant stakeholders to gather feedback and identify potential risks. And finally, making a decision that demonstrably aligns with regulatory requirements, ethical principles, and the institution's mission, with clear documentation of the rationale. Question 15. The efficiency study reveals that significant cost savings can be achieved by reducing the number of physical examination centers and consolidating administrative support staff for the Andi University entrance exam. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for conducting this university entrance exam? Option A. Immediately implement the proposed consolidation of examination centers and administrative staff to realize the identified cost savings. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to evaluate the potential effects of consolidating examination centers and administrative staff on student accessibility, examination integrity, and administrative workload, and use these findings to inform a revised implementation plan. Option C. Proceed with the consolidation of administrative support staff without consulting student representatives or faculty involved in exam administration. Option D. Prioritize the reduction of physical examination centers by shifting all examination components to an online format to maximize cost savings. The correct answer is A. Immediately implement the proposed consolidation of examination centers and administrative staff to realize the identified cost savings. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's desire for efficiency and cost reduction with the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and provide adequate resources for student learning. The Andi University entrance exam's regulatory framework likely emphasizes fairness, transparency, and the provision of a level playing field for all candidates. A hasty implementation of efficiency measures without proper impact assessment could inadvertently disadvantage certain student groups or compromise the validity of the examination process. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that considers the potential effects of proposed efficiency measures on various stakeholders, including students, faculty, and administrative staff. This assessment should identify potential risks, such as reduced access to essential study materials, increased student stress due to inadequate support, or a decline in the quality of examination administration. The justification for this approach lies in the Andi University entrance exam's commitment to upholding academic standards and ensuring equitable opportunities for all applicants. Regulatory guidelines would mandate a proactive and thorough evaluation to prevent unintended negative consequences and to ensure that any efficiency gains do not come at the expense of fairness or educational quality. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate cost savings without a thorough impact assessment would fail to meet these regulatory and ethical obligations. This could lead to a situation where resources are reallocated in a way that hinders student preparation or compromises the integrity of the examination process, potentially violating principles of fairness and equal opportunity. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on technological solutions without considering accessibility or user training would also be problematic. This could create new barriers for students who are not digitally proficient or who lack access to reliable technology, thereby undermining the principle of equitable access to the examination. A third incorrect approach that involves consulting only a limited group of stakeholders, such as senior management, would neglect the valuable perspectives of those directly affected by the changes, such as students and frontline administrative staff. This oversight could lead to the implementation of measures that are impractical or detrimental to the student experience, failing to uphold the university's duty of care. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic evaluation of proposed changes. This includes clearly defining the objectives of the efficiency measures, identifying all potential impacts, consulting with relevant stakeholders, and developing mitigation strategies for identified risks. Adherence to the Andi University entrance exam's specific regulatory framework and ethical guidelines should be paramount throughout this process, ensuring that decisions are not only efficient, but also fair, equitable, and supportive of the university's educational mission. Question 16. The efficiency study reveals that current administrative processes for managing applicant data and exam logistics for the Andi University entrance exam are time-consuming and resource-intensive. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for improved efficiency with the imperative to uphold the integrity and fairness of the entrance examination process, in accordance with Indonesian higher education regulations? Option A. Implement a new digital system for applicant data management and exam scheduling immediately to streamline operations and reduce manual workload, without extensive prior testing or stakeholder consultation. Option B. Introduce minor, incremental changes to existing manual processes, prioritizing those that offer the most immediate cost savings, even if they do not significantly improve overall efficiency or address potential risks to exam integrity. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment of proposed process changes, evaluating their effects on exam security, data privacy, accessibility for all applicants, and alignment with the regulations of the Indonesian Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology before any implementation. Option D. Focus solely on reducing the costs associated with the current administrative processes by outsourcing data entry and logistical tasks to the lowest bidder, irrespective of their experience with educational institutions or data security protocols. The correct answer is A. Implement a new digital system for applicant data management and exam scheduling immediately to streamline operations and reduce manual workload, without extensive prior testing or stakeholder consultation. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals potential areas for improvement in the administrative processes of Andi University. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a balanced approach that prioritizes both operational effectiveness and adherence to the university's established regulatory framework and ethical guidelines, as well as the specific regulations governing university entrance exams in Indonesia. A hasty implementation of changes without proper assessment could lead to unintended consequences, such as compromising the integrity of the entrance examination process or violating student data privacy regulations. The correct approach involves a thorough impact assessment that considers the potential effects of proposed changes on all stakeholders, including students, faculty, and administrative staff, and critically, on the fairness and security of the Andi University entrance exam. This approach aligns with the principles of good governance and responsible administration expected within the Indonesian higher education sector. Specifically, it necessitates a review against the regulations set forth by the Indonesian Ministry of Education, Culture, Research, and Technology, KenningtonCollege, concerning university admissions and examinations, ensuring that any proposed efficiency gains do not compromise the principles of equal opportunity, transparency, and academic integrity enshrined in these regulations. This includes evaluating how changes might affect the accessibility of the exam for diverse student populations and the security measures in place to prevent malpractice. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without considering the impact on exam integrity would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the regulatory framework governing university entrance exams, which mandates fairness and equal opportunity for all applicants. Implementing changes that inadvertently create barriers for certain student groups or compromise the security of the examination process would violate the spirit and letter of these regulations. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thoroughness would also be flawed. This overlooks the critical need for due diligence in any process that directly affects the validity and credibility of the Andi University entrance exam. Rushing changes without adequate consultation or impact analysis risks introducing errors or vulnerabilities that could undermine the entire admissions process and lead to reputational damage for the university, potentially contravening guidelines on academic standards and institutional integrity. A professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a systematic evaluation of proposed changes against the university's strategic objectives, ethical codes, and all applicable national and institutional regulations. This includes forming a multidisciplinary team to conduct the impact assessment, engaging with relevant stakeholders for feedback, and developing a phased implementation plan with clear metrics for success and risk mitigation strategies. The ultimate goal is to achieve efficiency gains without compromising the core values and regulatory compliance of the university, particularly concerning the integrity of its entrance examinations. Question 17. System analysis indicates a potential applicant for the Djemma University entrance exam has submitted a personal statement that, while not containing outright falsehoods, omits significant details about a period of academic probation at another institution, leading to a potentially misleading impression of their academic history. What is the most appropriate initial course of action for the university's admissions committee? Option A. Initiate disciplinary proceedings against the applicant for attempting to mislead the admissions committee, potentially barring them from future applications. Option B. Proceed with the application as submitted, assuming the omission was unintentional and does not significantly impact the applicant's suitability. Option C. Immediately reject the application due to the omission of critical information that could influence the admissions decision. Option D. Contact the applicant to request clarification and additional documentation regarding the period of academic probation before making a final decision. The correct answer is C. Immediately reject the application due to the omission of critical information that could influence the admissions decision. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student applications. The core difficulty lies in determining the appropriate response when a potential applicant provides information that, while not outright falsification, is misleading or omits crucial context. This requires careful judgment to uphold the university's standards without unfairly penalizing an applicant who may have made an honest error or a poor choice in presentation. The Djemma University entrance exam regulations likely emphasize fairness, transparency, and the accurate assessment of candidates. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough investigation and a request for clarification from the applicant. This aligns with the principles of due process and fairness often embedded in university admission policies and entrance exam guidelines. By seeking more information, the university demonstrates a commitment to understanding the applicant's situation fully before making a decision. This approach respects the applicant's right to explain their submission and allows the admissions committee to make an informed judgment based on complete facts, thereby upholding the spirit of the Djemma University entrance exam's commitment to merit and integrity. This proactive engagement is crucial for ensuring that decisions are not based on incomplete or potentially misinterpreted information. Incorrect approaches analysis. Immediately rejecting the application without further inquiry represents a failure to adhere to principles of fairness and due diligence. Such an action could be seen as overly punitive and may violate implicit or explicit guidelines within the Djemma University entrance exam framework that mandate a thorough review process. Assuming the applicant acted with malicious intent and proceeding with disciplinary action, such as barring them from future applications, is premature and lacks the necessary evidence. University entrance exam regulations typically require a higher burden of proof before imposing such severe sanctions. This approach bypasses the opportunity for the applicant to provide context or explanation, leading to a potentially unjust outcome. Ignoring the discrepancy and proceeding with the application as if no issue existed undermines the integrity of the admissions process. This approach fails to uphold the university's responsibility to ensure that all applicants are evaluated on accurate and complete information, potentially compromising the academic standards the Djemma University entrance exam aims to maintain. Professional reasoning. In situations involving potential discrepancies in application materials for the Djemma University entrance exam, professionals should adopt a systematic and fair approach. The decision-making process should prioritize gathering all relevant facts, providing the applicant with an opportunity to respond, and then making a judgment based on a comprehensive understanding of the situation, always in alignment with the specific regulations and ethical guidelines governing the exam. This ensures both the integrity of the admissions process and fairness to the applicant. Question 18. The control framework reveals that the Andi University entrance exam admissions process mandates complete and accurate disclosure of all academic records. An applicant, reviewing their past performance, realizes they have a period of significantly lower grades due to extenuating personal circumstances that they did not previously disclose. The applicant is concerned this might negatively impact their chances of admission. Which approach best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for this university's entrance exam? Option A. Exaggerate the positive aspects of their academic record and provide a vague, generalized explanation for any perceived weaknesses. Option B. Omit the period of lower grades from the application, focusing only on the stronger academic periods. Option C. Submit a revised transcript that artificially inflates the grades from the period of lower performance. Option D. Fully disclose the period of lower grades, providing a brief, factual explanation of the extenuating circumstances without embellishment. The correct answer is D. Fully disclose the period of lower grades, providing a brief, factual explanation of the extenuating circumstances without embellishment. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the applicant to balance the university's stated commitment to academic integrity with the practical pressures of admissions. The applicant must understand the implications of misrepresenting information and the ethical obligations associated with university admissions processes. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the applicant's actions align with the Djemma University's regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for admissions. The correct approach involves a truthful and transparent disclosure of all relevant information, even if it might be perceived as unfavorable. This aligns with the core principles of academic integrity and ethical conduct expected by Djemma University. Specifically, the university's admissions regulations likely emphasize honesty and accuracy in all submitted materials. By providing the complete academic record, the applicant demonstrates respect for these regulations and upholds the integrity of the admissions process. This approach fosters trust between the applicant and the university and ensures that admissions decisions are based on accurate information, preventing potential future issues or disqualification. An incorrect approach that involves omitting or downplaying negative academic performance would be a direct violation of the university's admissions policies, which invariably require full disclosure. This misrepresentation undermines the fairness of the admissions process and can lead to severe consequences, including the rescission of an offer of admission or expulsion. Another incorrect approach, such as fabricating positive explanations for poor performance without substantiation, also breaches ethical standards by introducing falsehoods. This demonstrates a lack of integrity and an unwillingness to take responsibility for academic outcomes, which is contrary to the values of an academic institution. A third incorrect approach, focusing solely on highlighting strengths while ignoring weaknesses, is a form of selective disclosure that, while not outright lying, still misleads the admissions committee by presenting an incomplete and therefore inaccurate picture of the applicant's academic profile. This fails to meet the expectation of comprehensive and honest self-representation. Professionals in admissions and applicants alike should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes honesty, transparency, and adherence to established regulations. This involves a thorough understanding of the specific rules and guidelines governing the process, a commitment to providing accurate information, and the courage to present a complete picture, even when it includes challenges. When faced with potentially negative information, the professional approach is to address it directly and honestly, providing context where appropriate, rather than attempting to conceal or distort it. Question 19. The efficiency study reveals that certain academic support services are underutilized, leading to significant operational costs. The university administration is considering consolidating these services into a single, centralized unit to reduce expenditure. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation, while upholding the principles of academic integrity and responsible resource management specific to Djemma University? Option A. Conduct a thorough impact assessment involving academic departments, faculty, and student representatives to evaluate the potential effects of consolidation on academic quality, student support, and accessibility of services before making any decisions. Option B. Outsource the underutilized services to a third-party provider to reduce direct university operational costs. Without a detailed analysis of the impact on service quality or student experience, Option C. Implement a phased reduction in the scope and staffing of the underutilized services, without consulting with affected academic units or students, to gradually decrease costs. Option D. Immediately proceed with consolidating the services to achieve immediate cost savings, assuming that efficiency gains will inherently benefit the academic mission. Correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough impact assessment involving academic departments, faculty, and student representatives to evaluate the potential effects of consolidation on academic quality, student support, and accessibility of services before making any decisions. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a potential conflict between the university's academic mission and its financial sustainability, a common challenge in higher education institutions. The scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for rigorous academic standards with the practicalities of resource allocation and operational efficiency. Decisions made here can have long-term impacts on student learning, faculty morale, and the university's reputation. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any proposed changes align with the core values and regulatory obligations of Djemma University. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that considers all stakeholders and potential consequences, aligning with the principles of good governance and responsible management expected of educational institutions. This approach prioritizes a thorough understanding of how proposed changes might affect academic quality, student experience, faculty workload, and compliance with any relevant educational regulations or accreditation standards specific to Djemma University. It emphasizes data-driven decision-making and proactive risk mitigation, ensuring that efficiency gains do not come at the expense of the university's primary educational objectives. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost reduction without considering the broader academic implications would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the university's mission and potentially violates ethical obligations to provide a high-quality educational environment. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes perceived efficiency over established academic processes or faculty consultation could lead to a breakdown in trust and morale, undermining the very effectiveness the study aims to improve. Such an approach neglects the importance of collegiality and shared governance, which are often implicit or explicit expectations within university structures. A third incorrect approach that involves implementing changes without proper consultation or communication with affected departments and students would be a failure in transparency and stakeholder engagement, potentially leading to resistance and unintended negative consequences. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the problem and the objectives of the efficiency study. Second, identify all relevant stakeholders and their potential interests and concerns. Third, gather comprehensive data, not just financial, but also qualitative data on academic impact, student feedback, and faculty perspectives. Fourth, develop a range of potential solutions, evaluating each against criteria that include academic integrity, financial viability, ethical considerations, and regulatory compliance. Fifth, conduct a thorough impact assessment for the preferred solution, including risk analysis and mitigation strategies. Finally, implement the chosen solution with clear communication and a plan for ongoing monitoring and evaluation. Question 20. The audit findings indicate a recurring pattern of delays in the processing of student financial aid applications, leading to student dissatisfaction and potential academic disruptions. Which of the following approaches best addresses the impact of these findings within the framework of Djemma University's operational guidelines and commitment to student welfare? Option A. Conduct a detailed review of the financial aid application process to identify bottlenecks, assess the impact on student academic progression and financial stability, and develop targeted procedural improvements in line with university policy on student support services. Option B. Issue a general statement to students acknowledging the delays and promising future improvements, while deferring a comprehensive review of the process. Option C. Implement a temporary increase in staffing within the financial aid office to expedite current applications, without investigating the underlying systemic causes of the delays. Option D. Focus on communicating the university's budget constraints as the primary reason for the delays, without undertaking a thorough analysis of internal processing inefficiencies. The correct answer is A. Conduct a detailed review of the financial aid application process to identify bottlenecks. Assess the impact on student academic progression and financial stability, and develop targeted procedural improvements in line with university policy on student support services. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential for misinterpreting audit findings and their implications for the Andi Djemma universities, compliance with its own internal regulations, and potentially broader educational standards. The challenge lies in moving beyond a superficial understanding of the findings to a robust assessment of their impact, requiring a nuanced application of established university policies and ethical considerations. The correct approach involves a systematic and thorough impact assessment. This entails not only identifying the specific areas flagged by the audit, but also evaluating the potential consequences of these findings on student welfare, academic integrity, and the university's operational efficiency. This approach aligns with the principles of good governance and continuous improvement expected of educational institutions. Specifically, it requires referencing the Andi Djemma University's internal audit charter and its established risk management framework, which mandate a proactive response to identified deficiencies. The ethical imperative is to ensure that the university operates in a manner that upholds its educational mission and protects the interests of its stakeholders. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the audit findings as minor or to implement superficial changes without a deep understanding of their root causes and potential ramifications. This failure to conduct a comprehensive impact assessment would violate the university's commitment to accountability and transparency. Another incorrect approach would be to focus solely on immediate cost-saving measures without considering the long-term impact on the quality of education or student support services. This would represent a dereliction of duty, as the primary responsibility of the university is to provide a high-quality educational experience. A further incorrect approach would be to delay or ignore the implementation of corrective actions, which would demonstrate a lack of commitment to compliance and could lead to more significant problems in the future, potentially jeopardizing the university's accreditation or reputation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, thoroughly understand the audit findings. Second, identify the relevant university policies and regulatory guidelines. Third, assess the potential impact of the findings across all relevant university functions. Fourth, prioritize corrective actions based on risk and impact. And finally, develop and implement a clear action plan with defined responsibilities and timelines, followed by ongoing monitoring and evaluation.